Hey everybody, Rhadamant here. Thanks for tuning in to episode 6 of Stationeers. So last we left off, I had basically completed my beautiful farm project here. I'm not going to bother cycling the airlock there. And this episode, I'm going to start to lay out the foundations for a more permanent base. One that I can take my helmet off, take my suit off, and kick back on a couch or something. So as you can see, there is a lot of ores that I have plopped into my airlock here for later use. But initially what I'm going to do is let's start cranking out steel sheets, or frames rather. So I have to come up with a somewhat compact design. Compact because in order to fill the base with atmosphere, it can't be massive. Now, maybe I'll do some massive projects later on, but I think for my starter house, much like a frontiersman in the American West, it's got to be a little, not a little, but a somewhat efficient log cabin. I am definitely planning on growing it bigger. It's going to be not as small as a log cabin, but additionally, what you can see here is I've done some organization, put some stuff away, filled my food bar up, stuff like that. So we are not running ragged, as it were. Now I will have to periodically fill my food bar up, which is kind of unfortunate. I filled this airlock full of stuff, but you know, it happens. So the new base is going to be entirely separate from the old base. It will have no attachments to it because I don't want to mess with the sort of system that I got going on over there. Plus, it's not all that interesting to a viewer to see me tamper with an old base. So I'm going to be laying out some steel frames for the sort of ground level of this new construction project. Fundamentally, I plan on it being a 3x3. Now, I wouldn't call it a complaint, but one of the things about this game versus some other survival games is the concept of a cell of area. It's going to sound like a complaint, but basically, my point is that you don't have like half blocks. Kind of reminds me of Minecraft. The original Minecraft did not have a concept of a half block. It just had full blocks, and then they eventually added in half blocks, and that opened up a lot of building design differences. So the bottom floor of my home here is going to be my atmospherics, and it's going to have a wider footprint than the floors above it, because atmospherics take a considerable amount of space. And I'm going to do proper permanent atmospherics, not the temporary crap that I have here. No offense to my current setup here, but it was fast and dirty because... Whoa. Fast and dirty because I was mostly concerned about getting food in my belly. But now that I have a somewhat permanent system of food production, I really don't have to worry about about taking as much time as this project needs. So the idea here is I want to store each and every gas. So I'm going to have 6 permanent tanks and 6 6 of the filters, and then I also want beautiful readouts and like heads-up displays and everything. I want to be able to tell what's going on in my atmospherics from a glance without pulling out a tablet, etc., etc. That is my idea of permanent and decent atmospherics. So what I'm doing here is laying out where my airlock's going to go. So I'm going to enter here, and then this will be atmospherics, and then there'll be an elevator at the back of the room that takes me up to new floors. Why an elevator? Because you requested it. This is the power of suggestion. If you have things that you want me to do, you only have to ask. Now, today marks the day where a lot of new features also got added to Stationeers, and I plan on delving into those new features soon, but I am going to keep it. I don't want to immediately go to like night vision goggles and rovers and all that because I need to start a base, right? So here we are. We are going to have our wonderful atmospherics in this area. Now, the reason I'm putting frames is most items can only be placed on frames. You can't just like plop items on wall tiles and things like that. So between each floor, there will be a set of frames, and this will allow me to put some internal components, and it will allow me to build a lot more easily and a lot more effectively, truth be told. It will add a crazy amount of extra volume to the base, but that is just how I'm going to go about building it, really. Why it will add extra volume is unless I fill the frames up with steel, unless I construct these fully, if they're hollow, they will also fill with air. And yeah, I could keep it from filling with air with airlocks. Maybe I'll do that just to keep the volume low. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. But the idea here is that some of these will be solid and allow me to put logic sort of in data closets, and some of them can be, empty, hollow. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't want to open that. And right now I'm just cranking out a whole bunch of steel frames so that I can sort of frame up the bottom floor. And I do have a lot more resources in order to make more frames, so I shouldn't have to do any mining this episode, provided I didn't screw up somewhere. And actually, you know what? The floor print for the bottom floor is going to be different than the floor print for the floors above, so I'm actually going to get rid of some of these frames. Our atmospherics will be wider because it's more complicated, but the floors above it won't have the same footprint. So we do have some frames left over, and any of the leftover frames I'm going to have as a front patio. Let's not crash too hard. And now I need to stop making steel frames. Of course, we're going to still need extra steel frames. And whoa! Okay, let me go get that. I meant to throw it. How far did I throw this thing? Oh my goodness. I meant to throw it a little bit towards the building I was building. I didn't mean to throw it like 15 miles away. Oops. Underestimate my own strength. It's like when Clark Kent discovered he was Superman. Can you imagine not knowing that you were somehow stronger or different, and like going for a tackle in football and just absolutely obliterating whoever you were trying to tackle? So at this point, we are just going to crank out a whole lot of steel sheets. It's going to take a while to make them all, but I can start constructing this frame. And whoop, I only made two. As we construct it, you'll see it sort of come together as a room. I'm trying to do as much as I can during the day here, but it's likely I'm going to need to create more steel. I'm going to run out of steel. Now, the reason I'm using steel over iron, steel is a stronger building material and also more efficient. It takes less steel to make a fully constructed frame than it does iron. I think the concept is it's higher tech and stronger, and therefore thinner. You can use less of it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that was the original sort of idea of Stationeers. Is iron is good and all and really cheap to source, but steel is stronger and lighter. And yeah, it's a little weird that there is coal on Mars. I get it. Coal was a result of an organic process, but whatever. You know, it's pretty realistic, but still a fantasy game, and I don't think we should judge it negatively because it has coal. You know, for all we know, sometime in the future we might come up with some sort of inorganic process to make some sort of steel-like substance that doesn't require dead, compacted animals. And the true is same with plastics. Although, to be fair, bioplastics already exist, so for plastics, it could actually make sense to have a farm full of certain plants that allow you to construct plastics. Did we weld 2 pieces here? Yeah, I guess we must have. Unintentionally. I mean, yeah, we might end up welding 2 for it to be airtight, but initially we'll just do the 1. All right.
Jetpack on.
And if I wanted to do this a little bit cleaner, I could put this into a hopper, but I don't. Chutes and hoppers are nice in the future. I can start adding stuff like that, but for now, I'm not going to do chutes and hoppers. I'm just going to have it crank out all messy. Now, some of these were probably airtight. The Martian soil actually can make things airtight. So if you like dig a cave and fill up the entrance to the cave, that cave will in fact be airtight if you do it right. I actually don't know off the top of my head about pressures. Like if you pressurize it too much, will it go kablamo and blow out part of the cave? I don't think that's the case, but I really hope that I'm not wrong about that. I'm just going to mine out some of the soil that pokes through the frames. Just aesthetically, it's ugly. All right. And it did slightly terraform, but that's fine. So this will be the atmospherics room, and we'll have an elevator here that takes us up to higher floors? Taller floors? Okay. Yes. So let's switch. We no longer need our mining belt. And I'm sure we have a crazy amount of frames here, spraying out everywhere. All right, I'll give it pause. Now the next thing I need to do is to move a lot of these materials over to the pipe bending unit, and we will start to make these atmospheric tanks. So the roofing that I have here, for now, I will construct frames. I might eventually hollow them out so that I can move around between floors as somewhat of a crawl space. I've built bases like this in the past, but for now, they need to be solid because I want to add roofing to them and stuff like that. And my spare frames or sheets can go here. So let's get the tanks constructed. And I might end up needing more resources. I'm not sure. We'll see. So we'll search for tank, and we want a tank, which is steel and copper. Yeah, I'm probably going to need more steel. I'm definitely going to need more steel. I also don't know how a steel sheet ended up over here. So let's go make a big batch of steel. I do have a stack of 50 coal here. So yeah, let's go do that. I'm going to show a different method. I got a tip from one of you guys. Let's see who gave it to me. Bogus2 mentioned this one, which is I can just drag. Now, I'm not exactly sure, maybe you guys know, how to split stacks in your hand without putting in your hand. I don't think that's possible, but I'll show you the tip anyway. So eventually, if I want to be able to smelt any part of the day, I would need like a vacuum room. But one way to avoid losing any extra materials is if you hold. I guess I could put this into my mining belt. So I could have a mining belt full of like 1 and 2 stacks, and basically you hold left alt and you can just drag and drop like this. And as you can see here, I have my furnace valve turned off. We'll activate. It heats up. Drop in my coal. And drop in the iron. Make sure it's a 3-to-1 ratio. And we'll have a good bit of steel in a minute. And for fuel for the furnace, it's 2 volatiles to 1 oxide. For just about everything except for Invar. Invar is a slightly different to make. All right, so here is 200 grams of steel. And for this tank, we need copper as well. So let's grab our copper. And what I think I'm going to do, given that we don't really need to introduce anything new to our furnace, what I mean by that is in order to have an operating an operating farm, it doesn't really require any more inputs, is I guess what I'm trying to say. What I'm going to do is I can just sort of separate this from the atmospheric system that's behind it. And right now what I'm doing is while the furnace is... yeah, this is gold. While the furnace is still hot, I'm going to go ahead and use as much of the heat as possible to do some ingot smelting. Because I'm going to want copper and gold smelted here. Iron, of course, arc furnace is fine. It's not great. It's not the greatest, but it's fine. And we are getting a lot of... Oh, no. It's too cold now. Temperatured out. Well, that frees up a lot of space. And I can just let this passively degas. It'll take a while. Let's check up on our farm real quick.
Light off.
Alright, it is cycling air, pressurizing to 109. Done. And we've got the soybeans started to grow. Let me turn on my...
Light off.
The potatoes are harvestable. Alright, let's harvest them all the way out and replant. And I'm going to have more potatoes than I even started with, and then the corn hasn't fully matured. So we have 6 potatoes that we otherwise would not have had. Let's cycle this again. I'm going to turn off lights. Lights don't consume a lot of power, and diode lights don't even consume any power. I think it would be so negligible it's not worth measuring. I'm not really worried about running out of power, but I don't know. The environmentalist in me does not want to waste power. So we start off with 5 potatoes. We have 3 planted in there. We have 8 here. We are definitely food positive at this point, so that's very good. Let's go ahead and make the tanks that I was going to make. And this is going to spit up onto this organic supply, so I'm going to move this a little bit. I tried to tidy up the base a little bit here, but it's not perfectly tidy.
Jetpack on.
How many tanks have I already made? Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we need 6. So the idea here is that I capture every gas. So there's 6. Well, there's kind of 7, but there's 6 elements in this game that exist, sort of. There's really 5 in 1. But the types of gases there's oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, which I'm going to want to fill the base with breathable atmosphere. And then there is water, which is always used for, not always, but used for farming. And then there is pollutant. Okay, so the piping, the way these small tanks are set up, I could also build large tanks. The thing with large tanks is we probably don't want to use that much space. This is, like I said, think log cabin, not metropolis. So we'll set up these tanks so that their plumbing faces us, and the data port, which we're going to want access to, faces left. And likewise, we'll spin this around so that it remains to be the same sort of layout. Small tank, rotate. Okay, so we're going to store the elements in here. I don't know which one's which. We can label them eventually. Why don't we label them now. So, oxygen tank. Carbon dioxide tank. Nitrogen tank. For now, that's what I'll put here. I have to think about how I want to filter the rest of it. Let's get rid of our mining belt. And put the labeler away. Okay, so now we have tanks. Eventually I'll paint these to be colored and all that. I'll pretty up this base. The last base, obviously, I didn't really pretty it up. This one was pretty rough. I left everything exposed and kind of nasty. This one will eventually be prettier. What I'm going to do now is go and make wall kits, which require steel. So let's go transfer some steel over. And we'll insert the rest of these metals back in. So the idea here is, like I said, I want to pretty it up. So we are going to have windows. They're not the structurally the most solid objects, obviously, but it's going to be a prettier base to look at. I'm going to say this flat out. I'm not like awesome at making super aesthetically pleasing stuff. I'm more of an engineer, far less of an artist, but I will do what I can to try to make these attractive. And one of the big advantages of having a lot of windows is, at least during the day, it is really a lot easier to see what you're doing because the sun is such a good resource for light. And then on these, we just plop down some plastic. And these wall sheets, and then eventually glass. And this is somewhat how it's going to look. And these will be windowed, which will look kind of nice, I think.
Jetpack on.
Hello, wall pieces. And then additionally, below these, what we can do is just regular composite walls for aesthetics. So as you can see, and there's a lot of different types of walls that you can have. There's also cladding and whatnot. For this one, it's just going to be, let's call it Mars chic. And yeah, I'm going to... The first project we had was mostly about utility. And this one is going to be a mix of utility and aesthetics. So yes, I'm using a lot of resources to beautify this one, but hey, it's our living quarters. It might as well not be hideous, is I guess what I'm trying to say. If I wanted a hideous base, I'd just live in here, recognizing that my initial project was hideous. Now, the advantage of having a hideous base with everything, all of its like internals exposed, is you can very easily see how I built it, how it works. You know, if I had everything sort of internalized, it would be a lot more difficult for the average viewer to figure out what's going on. You know, if all of the inner workings was hidden behind walls and whatnot. All right, so walling this up. And I will eventually wall my airlock off too. Like make the whole base pretty. I'm just making the initial part looking nice. And we're going to also install a elevator. Elevators in this game are surprisingly simple to have function. They're not complicated at all. I am also running out of plastic sheets, which means soon we'll need to smelt silicon. I'm going to go ahead and halt my wall construction. Let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll just arc furnace it. One thing to keep in mind, if you're trying to produce gases, especially on a place like the moon, different material, I'm not going to list them all, but different materials outgas different things. So when you melt silicon versus when you melt iron, they're going to produce different byproduct gases. So if you're, if you're trying to fill a base with a certain atmosphere, it might be worth looking up what sort of gases they produce. I sort of recall that smelting silicon produces maybe nitrogen or something. I forget. I don't quote me on that, but it produces a gas which is more rare than normal. So with this extra silicon, we can produce plastic sheets, which allow us to complete the sort of base of the starter of these windows and whatnot. And then if we really want to beautify it, which I might do in the future, we can also install the wallings on the inside too, so that it looks pretty in here as well, and flooring and all that. But I want to get all the atmospherics and plumbing and all that worked out first. It doesn't really make sense to put walls everywhere before we actually have the plumbing, because then we'd obscure it, and it would be really, really, really hard to work with. So here we go, a quick jetpack tour. As you can see, this is pretty much how it's going to look, with the atmospherics bumped out on the sides like that. Let's go ahead and get an elevator started. So elevators are a little weird, in my opinion, where you need to supply... The way you supply power to elevators kind of bothers me a little bit, but whatever. It's an elevator. It's pretty cool. Oh, no. Don't make a solar panel. Elevator. So for elevator, we need solder, which is a metal that I have not smelted yet. So what I'm going to do is... I think the easiest way for me to empty this furnace out, it's kind of cheating, is just to... Oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to construct it. Just to deconstruct the furnace and reconstruct it. No. What is it? Welding torch? And now... Oh, no, it actually didn't fully... Okay. Good to know. I need to really deconstruct it. Okay, cool. I could do that. It actually somehow managed to keep its atmosphere, its contents. Okay. So hopefully this will work. Fully deconstructing it and then fully constructing it again. Eventually I really ought to have a furnace that is in a vacuum room so that we can use it during the day, and one that has a pump that we can empty out. So here, the only pressure that's inside is the pressure that got reintroduced from this pipe here. This one, just this one section here, because this valve is off. So some of the atmosphere from this filled this pipe, and it filtered back in, but it's not enough to screw up smelting, I don't think. Power low, huh? Power full now. So if you're wondering, we needed solder, I believe. So that's lead and iron. 1-to-1 ratio of lead and iron. And lead is not really used in anything else, so we can go ahead and use all of our lead in the construction of solder. And I would say, generally speaking, solder is probably the first compound that you're going to need in large quantities. A lot of things require solder, like, for instance, these power controllers. They require solder, and a lot of things like that require solder. So solder it's fortunately also pretty easy to make. So I'm just waiting for my external temperatures to drop a little bit so that my wish I knew how to split a stack like this. Oops. Open up my encyclopedia. I'm sure there is a way, I'm just not aware of it. But it's cold enough now. So we're going to want to grab 2 volatiles and put these in, and then 1 oxite. If you know of a easier way to smelt during the day, they've already combusted. Drop in all of our lead. And all of the iron. And you have to make sure that your mold is closed, or the lead will just drop out. I must be missing pressure or gross. It just opened up. I must be missing something, heat or pressure, lacking the ability to make my solder. It's got to be... No, I mean, it might be too hot. What is, no, I don't think it's too hot. Pressure minimum, pressure maximum. Oh, it's too pressurized. That's what's going on. Let's see what I can do about that. If I want to depressurize it, I need to switch belts and grab a wrench. And let's go ahead and remove 2 pipes, actually 3 pipes from this. We will have this be a closed loop and separate off the furnace from this. I no longer want or need the furnace to be involved at all. And first what I'm going to do is open that valve, and what that's going to do is lower the pressure considerably, actually enough to make solder. So let's go ahead and make the solder. What I was going to eventually do is, and here's 100 grams of solder, put a passive vent there so I can vent it out. And that's what I'm going to do right now, actually. So let's go ahead and make our elevator. And then queue up a passive vent. And for a passive vent, we need a little bit more iron, so I will not have enough heat to make iron. Good to know. Alright, I have 4 elevator pieces. That's enough for now. I'm gonna want probably more. It depends on how tall my building goes. But yeah, let me put these elevator pieces down, and then that will be about all the time I have. So I'm going to have the elevators, something to keep in mind. There's 2 types of elevators. There's levels, which you get off at, and then there's shafts, which you do not. Elevators are also not airtight. So the back panel of an elevator is airtight, this back panel here, but the rest of the elevator, not airtight, so don't expect it to be. And the way they work is you put just the levels and then the shafts down. So above my atmospherics, I'm going to have another level. And what I'm planning on doing is having the second level of this be sort of the living quarters. And then the top level, the next level one up, will be a farm. Farm should be at the top. It needs to be on the roof. It needs sun access. So that's sort of the idea behind my base here. So that's all the time I have for this episode. As you can see, it's coming together. If you have any feedback, questions for me, ideas for future projects or anything like that, drop me a line. Once again, if you know of a way for me to split stacks in my inventory so I can smelt during the day, I guess I could Google for it, but I'm lazy and I'll just crowdsource your brains. But yeah, I'm looking, I guess, for that answer too. And thank you all very much for watching. I hope you tune in next time. Adios, everybody.